Most of us here today are celebrating July 4th because we believe that the country in which we now live is the same America that first gained her independence on this day in 1776. We believe it's the same country. But I would like for us to consider for just a moment today something a little radical. This is not the same America, but something altogether foreign. Now, before you get the wrong idea, I'm not going to be talking today about progressives. I won't be talking about Democrats or Republicans. I will not be talking about Trump, Obama, or Hillary. Many may not realize this, but less than 100 years after America's birth and independence, the American states were given a new birth of dependence on national government. Friends, the America we know today was not born on July 4, 1776. It was born on March 2nd, 1867. Well, I'm sure you might remember a few history lessons about the Civil War. Maybe you remember a few dates, names of generals and heroes. You probably remember something about the greatness of Mr. Lincoln, I would imagine. But if you're anything like me, you may not recall, or maybe you were never taught much about the years that immediately followed the war. Friends, our timeline begins in 1865. The 11 previous Confederate states were considered back in the Union. They had participated in the lawful abolition of slavery with the 13th Amendment. Peace is declared. 2 months later, the 39th Congress introduces something new, the 14th Amendment. Now, it's said to give blacks civil rights, but many believe it does much more than that. This amendment is rejected by all former Confederate states with the exception of Tennessee, and even northern and western states like Kentucky, Delaware, Maryland, and California all reject this amendment. Other states like Ohio, New Jersey, Oregon, they will also later rescind their ratifications. The 14th Amendment falls flat for now. This is where it gets interesting. About a year after peace and 2 years after the war, Congress passes the first in a series of 4 acts called the Reconstruction Acts, March 2nd, 1867. Whereas no legal state governments now exist in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Florida, Texas, and Arkansas. Said rebel states shall be divided into military districts, and when said state shall have adopted the amendment to the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, then said state shall be declared entitled to representation in Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, here we have a United States Congress nullifying, that means to declare invalid, entire member states of the Union, based on nothing whatsoever besides Congress's own decree, in order to force an amendment into our Constitution. These were states that just 2 years earlier had elected toward the abolition of slavery. Why are they being annulled by Congress in times of peace? They're using military occupation to create new state governments loyal to Congress. Folks, this forgotten part of our history is monumental, but you're asking yourself probably, how does this relate to us today? That's a good question. Maybe you've heard of Roe versus Wade. It universally legalized abortion across the United States in 1973, based on the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. Maybe you've heard of Stone versus Graham, which held that the display of the Ten Commandments was unconstitutional, thanks to the 14th Amendment. Perhaps you've heard of Abington School District versus Shemp, which held that school prayer was unconstitutional, thanks to the 14th Amendment. Maybe you've heard of Hewitt versus the City of King case, which happened just a few years ago here locally. All of these cases rely on the fact that America is no longer a federation of sovereign states with state citizens, but essentially now we've become one large state of national citizens, controlled universally by and receiving benefits from a national body. Perhaps you've heard of the CIA, the FBI, and the IRS, the Department of Education, Homeland Security, Patriot Act I, Patriot Act II, the Military Commissions Act, the NDAA, the EPA, or the NSA. The size and uncontrollable scope of today's national government owes its origins to the unauthorized power and the precedence that was established and claimed by the 39th Congress on March 2nd, 1867. But let me tell you a little bit about a congressman by the name of James G. Blaine during this era. He was a big supporter of the 14th Amendment. He said, quote, "And in making this extension of citizenship, we are not confining our breadth and scope of our efforts to the Negro. It is for the white man as well. We intend to make citizenship national. He also said it's the utter destruction of that pestilent heresy called state rights. The heresy of state rights. See, friends, America was never intended to be a strictly national system like we know today, but a federation of sovereign states. Federalist 39, which planned out and presented the Constitution to the American people, told us, the proposed government cannot be deemed a national one, since its jurisdiction extends to certain enumerated objects only. What this is talking about are the limited powers granted to the federal government by those sovereign states. So what's the evidence as we see it today? The America born on July 4th, the one we're celebrating today, was one in which each state was comprised of its state citizens, each loyal to the decisions of their state on the most divisive of issues. The federal government had no authority in those situations. Now, the America we know today is composed of national citizens loyal to national benefits. The America born on July 4th was one in which, believe it or not, states were free to decide even on religious matters. State citizens knew July 4th as a day of celebration. Unfortunately, almost none of us here today are state citizens. If you'll take a look at your voter registration application, you declare under penalty of perjury you are a United States citizen. You're a citizen of every state at once, rather than having a loyalty to a single state. Now, folks, I'm not trying to tell you today to pack up the fireworks and stay home tonight. That's not what I'm here for. We should be immensely proud of our former independence. However, let's start realizing and gaining the knowledge that there are deep, deep things in our American history that we don't know or understand. These are not things that are being taught in our schools. No, friends, I'm here to encourage us, young and old, to open our minds and take time out of our lives for study. Study not about politicians and parties, but of violations that have been committed against our dear Constitution. As Americans today, we have a right and a duty. We have a moral obligation to our children and our posterity, and to all of those we leave behind, not only to know and understand the wrongs that have been committed on March 2nd, which birthed into existence this new foreign concept of American government, but to right these wrongs as well. The goal of our organization, America's Remedy, is to arm every American with the power that knowledge gives, and then to introduce you to a remedy which would altogether reset the structure of American government back to that united federation of sovereign states and a limited federal government. And you know what's great? You know what's huge? It would limit the federal government regardless of which president is in office. We need educators, we need teachers, we need local law enforcement. We need writers, and we need allies who will take this message to the streets and tell others about it. I'd like to leave you with this thought from Ezekiel 33:6. It tells us, "But if the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet, so that the people are not warned, and the sword comes and takes any one of them, that person is taken away in his iniquity. But his blood I will require at the watchman's hand." Friends, this Independence Day, let us consider our role as the watchman on the wall, to warn those around us, as our Declaration of Independence first said, to provide new guards for our future security. Independence depends on you. Thank you.